Welcome back to the PIG. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Erin. If you're just tuning in, this is part 2 of a really special conversation, and we encourage you to go back and listen to both episode 1 and episode 2 first if you haven't already. But if you're all caught up, welcome back. We're so glad you're here.
In our last episode, we got to know 2 of the most important people in our lives, my husband Marcus and Erin's boyfriend Jason. Not just as our partners, but as individuals with their own stories, their own triumphs and challenges, and their own unique legacies in the making. We explored their personal and professional journeys, the experiences that have shaped them, and how they've watched our connection as sisters and the Boxes Project unfold.
We talked about how life has a way of shaping us, sometimes in ways we expect, and sometimes in ways we never see coming. And that's where we're going today, into the moments that change us, that transform us, and that prove the power of our resilience, the ones that leave a mark, the ones that teach us about love, loss, and what it really means to live with intention.
Because the truth is, loss isn't only about grief in the way we traditionally think about it. It isn't just about losing those we love. It's also about the relationships that evolve, the chapters that close, and the versions of ourselves that, whether we realize it or not, we eventually leave behind.
And if there's one thing we've learned, it's that loss, while sometimes deeply painful, can also be a teacher, a guide, a friend. Loss can shape us, push us forward, help us confront our insecurities, and help us become who we were always meant to be.
So today, we're going to explore that with Marcus and Jason as we dive into their experiences with love and loss, not just through their relationships with us, but in their lives as a whole. So settle in, take a breath, and join us as we continue this journey. Welcome to the PIG.
Marcus, let's start with you. Between your own personal journey and your professional work over the past 20 years, life has thrown many lessons your way. Are there any defining moments that have shaped your perspective on love and loss?
Well, yes, Erin. You asked me that question and 2 things pop into my mind and they're actually connected. So I'm going to start with love first. 2009, my father had passed away. And once I got his estate all settled and everything, I decided to take a road trip. And so on that road trip, I hopped in his Subaru Outback that he had and traveled up to Eastern Oregon, which is where we used to live. I think I shared that in the previous show when we moved from LA up to Oregon. Went to a place called Crane Mountain outside of Lakeview, Oregon, and did some fishing up there at a place that's very near and dear to me from my childhood with my dad fishing. Made my way up through other parts of Oregon, cut across into Idaho, and then made my way to Coeur d'Alene. And when I was in Coeur d'Alene, one day I found myself sitting along the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene on Tubbs Hill. I was kind of looking southwest and I had a notepad with me, and my father's death had, I guess, sort of, caused me to start thinking about certain things in my life. It made me want to explore certain things more, open up things. And so what I decided to do was to consider every relationship I'd ever had in my life that was a meaningful one. And that was all of them, basically, because I was never a player. I always had long-term relationships. And so I sat down with my notepad and my pen, and I thought of every single important relationship that I had with a woman in my life. And I only thought about the things that I loved and admired about them in the relationship. Nothing that was bad, nothing that bothered me, only the good. And I wrote every single one of those things down. When I got done, I read all of them and I opened my arms. I looked out across the lake and I just said, I am ready to meet this human being. And it was probably about 7 weeks later when your sister Kelly and I passed each other in the hallway there at Crossroads. It was Dale Reese's birthday. And I said hi to her. And for whatever reason, she heard me that day. And that began our journey that takes us to where we are now, 15 years later, fully in love, having gotten married in Coeur d'Alene on the floating boardwalk out there with just our kids present. That changed my life. I mean, literally that moment, that time of writing down what I wanted, what I admired, what I valued from all my relationships, and then saying, I'm ready for that one whole human being to come into my life was very profound. And when it happened, it got really profound. And the fact that Kelly and I are still together and that we are in love with each other 15 years later, it changed my life. It changed my perspective on love. It taught me that love was greater than anything I'd ever known to that point in my life with another woman. It's helped to make me the man that I am today.
God, that's so beautiful. Did you know when you met her?
You know,
Or how quickly did you know?
it was interesting because your sister and I both taught classes back to back, and we crossed paths with each other. And I would go in and say hi to her, give her a hug, wish her a good day after class. But we didn't really know each other very well. We never really connected. But when I said hello and she heard me, we went out and had a few weeks later, we started talking, and we went out to our first movie just as friends. It was Avatar. And by the time we got to what was the name of that second movie that we saw, Sweetheart? It was the one with the football player.
Blindside.
Blindside, that's what it was. We went and saw Blindside, and I felt like I should hold her hand.
I love it.
It was really cute, right? I was starting to get really attracted to her, just feeling really good about it. We had some amazing, deep conversations pretty much right out of the gate. We didn't hold anything back. We let it all go. We're just open and transparent with each other about who we were, where we've been, what our life was about. But I started to feel really good about Kelly pretty quickly after that Blindside movie. And I think it just took off from there. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience, honestly.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what about loss?
Yes, I've got one of those as well. As I said, these two stories connected. And this is, when you learn about loss and you learn about love, you learn about the other as well, right? Because I don't want to be without your sister, right? I don't want to lose your sister. So loving her the way that I do and her loving me back, I don't want that to change. With the loss that I experienced, I would say the most profound one that I've experienced so far would be the death of my father. As I shared in the last episode, he had Crohn's, and him and my mother had separated. They've gotten a divorce. She'd moved to the other side of the mountain. Her and my sister were not communicating with him at all anymore. And I was basically my father's caregiver. I'd go out there and check on him several times a week, have lunch with him, dinner with him, visit with him, help him out, etc. And one day I went out there to bring him a coffee from Starbucks, and I walked in the front door, and my dad was sitting in his recliner and just fall asleep a lot of times with the medications that he was on and different things. And I walked in and I said, "Hi, Pop." And he didn't say anything. It looked like he was just asleep in his chair. And I went and put the coffee down on the table. And when I turned around, I could see that he'd shot himself in the head, and the whole left side of his head was open. He was still alive. And, that's a pretty big moment in your life when your father and your best friend has committed suicide because he couldn't go anymore. It was only because he was deteriorated to the point he didn't want to live in a nursing home, and he didn't want to do that. And he wanted to take himself out before he got there. So he did. And you turn around and you see your father there, and I can't even tell you what goes through your mind. I just can't tell you other than love. And what do I do? And the first thing I did is I checked to see if he was still alive, and he was breathing. Then I moved the gun from out of his lap. It had fallen in his lap on the left-hand side of his chair. I removed that. And then I called 911, put them on speakerphone, and they walked me through holding his head upright so that I could maintain his airway until they could get there. And then they got there and they came in, and they kind of had to remove me from him because I didn't want to let his head go. And they eventually got me away from him, and then they put him on the gurney, and I could hear him making sounds. He was uncomfortable. He was in pain. And, they questioned me for several hours. They took him away to the hospital. When I got there, his head was all bandaged up and he was on a breathing tube. And they told me that he was brain dead, that basically it was his brain stem that was still functioning, and that, he wasn't going to have any sort of meaningful life going forward. And so I had to make the decision by myself to unplug my father. And I did. And because that's what he would have wanted. And so I did it, and I stayed in the room with my father as he went through the death throes that you go through when your body is shutting down. And literally, I had my left hand on his heart, and I had my right hand holding his left hand as his last heartbeat happened. And I will tell you that was a pretty big deal. That was a big deal. But I'm glad that I was there. I'm glad I found him and nobody else did. I'm glad that I turned him off and nobody else had to. And I'm glad that I had that last heartbeat. And that taught me about loss and love at the same time, because I love that man to this day and I miss him to this day. So like I said, when you lose someone, you learn about time, like we talked about last time, how precious it is. You learn about what it is to truly love someone and wish you could love them more before they're gone. And when you love someone, you also learn about loss because you don't want them to leave.
Thank you, Marcus, for sharing.
Yeah, it's good to talk about.
Obviously, this has been a story that has been a deep part of our relationship as we have together explored not just the loves of our lives and the losses that we have traveled through individually and together. Since we've been together, we've had to face a lot of changes to our reality, particularly with our children. So, from my heart, Marcus, as your partner in life, thank you for being so authentic and transparent with your story and sharing it so that other people can learn from it as well.
My pleasure. I don't talk about it a lot with a lot of people. I keep pretty close to myself. I have shared it with some people, but that's just something I've chosen to keep to myself for a number of reasons for the most part.
And I didn't know if it would be part of this conversation or not. So to feel that you have this safe space to open up about that is really meaningful.
Well, I just wanted to answer your question as authentically and genuinely as I could. And like I said, when Aaron asked me the question, two things that popped in my head were Lake Coeur d'Alene and you and my father. So I was just trying to be true to what came to me.
Thank you for that. When we talk about love and loss, both, those experiences change us. They just do.
Agreed. I think they ground in the importance of life and love and relationship, all the things that we have a tendency to take for granted until they're gone. You know what I mean? And I think life has a way of opening our eyes to that the longer we live if we pay attention and we
Indeed.
feel.
Yes. Marcus, would you expand on those experiences in particular or other ones, but reflecting back on that and like I just said, the experiences that change us. What did those experiences teach you about yourself?
Well, let me take the love one first with Kelly. It taught me that I can ask for what I want. It taught me that I can experience what I want if I'm willing to ask for it. And when it arrives, recognize it and lean into it and build it. You have to build a loving relationship with the person that you're with. I don't think it always happens organically. I think you have to work at it because there are tough times. There's no doubt about it, the things you go through. I think it also taught me that, I was very picky. I'm gonna be honest about it. I did not want to get divorced ever. I did not want to get married and have to call it quits. I didn't get married till I was 50 years old. Your sister and I met and we started dating. And I didn't ask her to marry me or we didn't actually get married until 2018. And that my daughter, Savannah, was really happy about that. Hey, my dad's finally getting married and he's only 50. But I was picky, I mean, I didn't want to just settle. So I learned that was important too. And to believe in the future that I wanted, to ask for what I wanted when it comes, recognize it and embrace it. When it comes to the loss, the story in regards to my father, it's really time, how precious time is, how important the relationships are. They could change at any moment. And it's important to recognize what we have in front of us when we have a meaningful, fulfilling, honest, genuine, true relationship with somebody in our life, whether a friend or family member, no matter who it is, as long as it's real, genuine, that's powerful. And to not take them for granted, to nurture them, to honor them, to engage them, to help them become all that they can be, and let them help you become all that you can be through that experience, I would say.
That's really beautiful. One thing that I kept thinking about as you were talking is, Kelly and I shared that our PIG is purpose, intention, and gratitude. And everything that you shared about those experiences and what they've taught you about yourself and how you've chosen to move forward in your life through them is very intentional. And so that really resonates with me. And I know with Kelly as well. And your eye might be different. Our listeners' eyes might be different. And there are a lot of I words out there. And there's a lot of I words that define who we are and what we're doing through life. But being intentional deeply resonates with us. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Absolutely.
Marcus, if you had to name anything that you can think about that people misunderstand the most about grief or loss or changing through the process of experiencing grief and loss, what would that be?
Well, I think everybody's grieving path is very personal, right? So some people grieve much longer than others. Some people grieve their entire life. Some people don't grieve at all. And I think for most of it, it's somewhere in the middle. I think I'm going to flash back to the story about my dad. So, after all of that happened and I turned him off and everything that day, his life ended. I went home. I was physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted. I was just spent, right? So I went home and I crashed out and just slept. The next day, I had to take care of some things. So I did that. The day after that, which would have been 2 days after he passed, I went back to work. I wanted to start working with people again. I wanted to keep going, and I found myself outside a Trader's coffee shop, which was right across the street from the hospital where my father passed away just 2 days earlier. I got a cup of coffee. I was sitting in my truck, getting ready to drive to my first client of the day, and on comes his favorite song. And I sat back in my seat of my truck and I just started smiling. And gratitude overtook me for how long I'd had him in my life, because he didn't have to be here that long. He almost died when I was a child, but it got him so many years. And I just started getting really grateful. And I'll be honest with you, my tears are not tears of sadness. They are tears of joy. The emotion that you hear within me are not sadness, because I don't feel lost. My dad's not here anymore. I just feel grateful. All I remember are the good memories, the fishing trips, the golfing things. He'd take me golfing or out to lunch, or, hey, son, let's go get a cup of hot chocolate or whatever, let's go get an ice cream at Baskin and Robbins. I love Cherry's Jubilee and he loved pistachio. So these are the things that stand out to me now. And gratitude is what took me over. And I've just been grateful ever since that day for him being in my life. So I would say that one of the greatest things that I have found to be misunderstood through the work I've done with people is that you can turn grief into gratitude as soon as you choose to. And when you choose to, my own personal experience and the experience of the clients I've worked with is that actually changes your reality in unbelievable ways. I'll give you a real quick side story. Client I worked with, she had a child that passed away from SIDS when just a baby. Okay. So sudden infant death syndrome. When that happened, she blamed herself. And she basically had withdrawn from society. She was a business owner, but she withdrew from her friends, her social circles, everything else, head down, doing business, trying to distract herself, right? So anyways, I started working with her, and very quickly, I was able to see that she was in the cave, like the allegory of the cave, where she was inside this cave, watching the world go on around her, but she wasn't truly living. She wasn't truly alive. And so basically, we looked at her purpose, which goes back to PIG that you guys have identified, purpose. I said, what's your purpose? She says, ever since my child has died, I really haven't had one. I don't know. And I said, well, let's remember, you don't have to, your purpose doesn't have to be earth shattering or mountain moving. It can be something very simple, something very easy that can really help you. I said, how do you feel about having the purpose of just being happy? She kind of sat back in her chair and she looked at me and she said, can I do that? And I said, you can choose any purpose you want. And the one thing that appears to be missing in your life right now is happiness and fulfillment. So what do you say we pick that one? She did. And very, very quickly, in relative terms, down the road, she was the one that told me, I realized that I was in a cave. I didn't tell her that. She told me that. I could see it, but she told me. And she said, I just dropped out of everything years ago. I just didn't know what to do. I felt like I failed. It was my fault. And so I just kind of hid from everyone. And she said, now I'm out getting into my social circles again. I plan to get on a couple of boards in town. I want to work with St. Mary's Hospital and help them out on a board, etc. And I'm really getting involved with life again. And Marcus, I'm happy again and getting happier. And so that was a wonderful thing that I was able to share with her, and that she mirrored back to me, that once you decide to take your perspective of what happened and be grateful for it, turn it around and start living again, it changes everything in front of you.
I actually just wrote down what you said because it was so profound to me, which is you can turn grief into gratitude as soon as you choose to. Beautiful.
It's powerful, Aaron. It truly is. I've seen it many, many times, and I felt it. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It really is. I'll share a personal story there because, Marcus, you have heard this so many times. Aaron, I know you have as well. Our mom died 30 years ago, and you were just 17 years old. I had just turned 24 years old, and we were just starting to become friends. You guys weren't quite there yet, but we were at that point of life. And, we have a 28, a 24, and a 22-year-old now. So now the perspective is so interesting as a mother on the other side. And I know you know that as well with your boys, Hadley and Weston, and the ages they are. But as I got through that first year of grief and those major milestones and got into that second year, and I was starting to fulfill my objectives with my career and make new friends and It was the time in my life where all of my friends were complaining about their mothers. My mom said this, my mom did that. I'm so mad at my mom about, or my mom's telling me how to parent. And I remember feeling sadness when that would happen. I remember even talking to some of my closest friends about how that challenged me in my grief. And I made a conscious decision in those early years, and that was to have a closer relationship with our mother in her absence than I might have had otherwise if she were still here. And that started a now almost 30-year journey of staying connected to her, thinking about her, wondering what she might advise or recommend, or going to her in my quiet moments, like not knowing what we were going to name Lily when she was born and saying, okay, mom, show up and help me. And waking up and hearing Lily and going, that's it. Right. So now we have our Lily right. But just those little things that Marcus, I think from the story that I heard you share, that became my purpose and my intention. And it really helped me heal my heart in ways I didn't know at the time it would do, but have been so profound in all the years since.
Yeah, I think that's fairly stated. I think that what you choose to do with the powerful mind that you have affects you and others greatly, affects the reality greatly. And I think it's important that we all realize that we have a lot of power in our hands. We are very empowered human beings, very empowered beings, if you will, if we just choose to use the power of our minds to direct us where we'd like to go, whether it's towards the love of our life, as in the case with you entering my life, whether it is how do I choose to see the passing of my father, even though it was a very unpleasant thing to be a part of, to turn it into a good thing that, just love and gratitude and memory and joy. I think that we're very powerful and we need not forget that.
Well, I think that's a very, very important point. And so that's going to be a P word of our podcast episode today is we all have the power to control our minds and to control our emotions and to make life the very best that we possibly can. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
So, Jason, I want to ask you the exact same thing. And you may have some thoughts to share on everything that you just heard with Marcus. But, throughout your life, you've had a lot of experiences in a body, both love and loss. And I know there are some pretty profound ones, both personally and professionally. And we touched on some of that in our last episode. But as you reflect on the living of your life, what are those defining moments that have shaped your understanding of what it means to both love and to lose?
First of all, very powerful what Marcus shared, and the courage to just be open and vulnerable, and just have that opportunity to know that what he's going to share is going to impact people that are listening. So I really applaud him for having that courage and that open and honesty and vulnerability for all and for everyone listening. I mean, take that to heart. There's very few people that will give you not only the insight of what they've gone through, but also the emotion behind it. It's pretty easy to Joe Friday the moments, and I do it well. It comes across a lot better, and it means a lot more when you bring your honest, raw emotion into it as well. And so I applaud him for that. For myself, when it comes to love and loss, there's a couple things that popped into my mind. On the love side, I remember I had just gotten done working with this company and doing some different things with the Department of Commerce and traveling and launching some apps and having some fun. And, when am I going to make my first $1 million and all of these things? And I was struggling with a lot of things. And so I decided to go see a therapist. I thought that would be pretty good to do. And I remember the therapist asked me, she goes, "Why are you here?" And I wanted a relationship. I wanted to have a real relationship, not just date around. I wanted to try to have a real relationship. And I told her, I go, "I don't know how to love people." And she looked at me and she goes, "What do you mean?" And I go, "Well, I don't know how to love people. I know transactions. I know how to make people feel good, but I don't know how to let people in. I don't know what that looks like." And we had some nice, long, in-depth conversations, and ultimately what I learned from myself and in that time was that there are things you want, and sometimes you want them just because you don't have them, and it doesn't mean you're ready for them. You know, my kid would love to drive. She would love to drive. She's not ready to, right? I mean, there's a lot of reasons she's not ready to. Can't reach the pedals. There's a lot, but she's just not ready. And when I look back at that time, I wasn't ready, and I wanted something different because I saw the failures of my parents having multiple marriages, all of them, and thinking, oh, well, I'm not going to have that, but I'm just going to do it better. And I'm going to, I don't care what age I start at, and looking back now, boy, what a whirlwind and probably not the best partner I would have been during those times of my life, emotionally and how I loved or didn't and how I knew and not knew how to. So it became a barometer though for me of moving forward and trying to figure out what love is, and I like Marcus, I didn't want to get married and divorced. I had seen enough divorce. At the same time, I didn't buy the echoes of why you don't get divorced because my thing was, well, I don't want to show my kid that this is a healthy relationship when it's not, right? I don't want to show the people around me, hey, I'm happy when I'm not. And happy is probably the wrong word. I would say more content and willing to grow with that person, continually grow with them and challenge one another just to be better, right? But if you're not going to do that, or you don't have the partner that wants to go down that road with you, then you've got to make hard choices. So love's been a struggle for me my whole life as a kid. And then, we talked about this last episode. Relationships are a struggle for me. Some of it's my personality. Some of it's just me as a person and looking at people and wondering what I can give to them, right? Not what I will receive from it, but what can I give to them and just keep it transactional, right? And so I lose touch with people, not because I don't want to, because I just don't want to talk about what to do or why I would reach out. Because I never want to reach out wanting something. I want to be the person that helps, not the person that needs help. And so it's a continued struggle, right? And that's okay. It's one thing to recognize, it's another thing to work on it, and it's another thing to challenge yourself to keep growing and seeing stuff, that'll make life better, if you will. So yeah, love's an interesting one. It's still an evolving pattern, and it's as Aaron and I talk about, it's awesome, but it's a great struggle, especially with my daughter. You want to give your kids everything, right? We all know this. We want to, but at the same time, in wanting to give them everything, you got to put bumpers on things, and you've got to decide where and when you're strong and when you hold down those rules and how that love looks, right? And as Aaron can attest, sometimes I'm a little too strict because I want things clearly defined in a world that doesn't allow for clear definitions. There's a lot of gray, murky areas, and I operate well with those personally, right? Like I can personally in my head navigate them, but when it comes to relationships or business, I just don't, right? They don't execute out of my brain well. And so, yeah, roundabout long way, love's a tough one. I love your sister to death, and I'm blessed with the patience she has with me. I'm very blessed with just the opportunity to, much like you and Marcus, right? When Aaron and I met, we weren't looking for relationships. And I've gone years without one. I didn't want one. And, Harper met Weston and Hadley and Daisy, and she's like, you wouldn't believe the neighbors have a dog, and we don't have a dog, and this is the best thing ever. And I'm like, great, they got a dog. Okay, well, we're not getting a dog. Well, I said hi to Hadley, and he's super nice. And I met Weston, and I'm like, you just got a crush on Weston. Great. I don't know who these people are. I don't know why you're talking to boys, but we need to stop this, And then I met Aaron, and like you two, we had many nights of just long conversations. And there was a lot of times, there's a couple times where I'd indulged a little much, and I'm just like, oh, this poor woman, she's like coming over, and I'm polishing off a bottle of wine, and I got some UFO show on, and I'm texting with my buddy who's in Mensa, who's the foremost thought leader in knowledge graphs about esoteric ideas of how you find things. And she's like, hi, how are you? And I'm just like, I'm a crazy person. And in some ways, I really am. But we got to have these long conversations. And I remember once she knocked on the door, and I am in a sarong and a t-shirt, and that's it. Nothing underneath the sarong. And she knocks. She goes, "Hey, can I borrow a couple eggs?" And I looked at her, and I was like, "Do you think I'm rich? You think I took a home equity line of credit out on this place? Like it's an apartment. I'm not 2 eggs." wrong with you? Of course. And I went to close the door on her. And I was like, I'm gonna close the door. I'm just in a sarong and a t-shirt. And she goes, that's all right. And just walked right in. And it was just guards down. Like I wasn't here to impress you. This wasn't a we met on a dating site, and you're like, oh, you're cute. And I like to hike. First of all, very few people actually like to hike. When you say I like movies, no, you don't. Because I like horror movies and you like romantic comedies. So we like different things, and that's okay. But there wasn't that. There was none of that crap. It was just us. And it was just us with long conversations. And it was absolutely beautiful. And it was so much fun. And then, I finally asked her out and we went on a date. And, the rest is history from our first Super Bowl together to our second. And being able to sit down with someone and talk with them about these things and share where you're not strongest and why, and that it's okay, right? Because once again, I'm not here to impress her. I'm just not. I'm me, broken in a lot of ways and good in some, but just having that opportunity to really be with someone and share with them across the board, what was important to me because it was important to me, not what was important to me because it might impress her. And also learning where, even in love, how I communicate. I got this big neon sign that I turn on that says choose love because I got 3 rules in my house. Can't is the only cuss word. It's the profanity word. It's the one word you don't use here, right? You got to choose love even in the hard moments. And I learned in some ways that hey, I wasn't choosing love in the hard moments. I was just being hard, and that's not okay, right? And then manners, manners matter and listening matters. And those two things, that's part of manners is listening, right? 2 eyes, 2 ears, one mouth. And we talked about that last time. So it's taking those pragmatic approaches to life and being blessed to be with someone who shows me the emotional side of those things when it comes to love and when it comes to connection and when it comes to just that real first touch, right? And then how for someone like me, like how do you keep that going where it's not transactional? How are you just there sometimes? And then also learning how that you can be there and be present, right? And you can be there and not be present. And you're just kind of checked out because you're checked out and understanding the difference. And I didn't know the difference. And I'm like, what? I'm here. She's like, I mean, you're physically here, but you have checked out. You're gone. I don't know where your brain's at. I don't know where your heart's at. And then I'd get offended and be like, no, because I was defensive because I didn't know. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know what to say. Much like what you two are finding out as you're going through this process, being with Erin over this last year has brought a beautiful process to me as well. And it is a lot about love. And she's been around a couple of losses and what those look like, and big ones and little ones. But across the board, I lean more on the education my heart's gotten and on the opportunity that I've had to not necessarily learn how to love, but instead understand where I'm at and where I can grow and what that looks like, and that I have a partner in my life that's willing to take the time and the patience to walk me through that.
First of all, I love your 3 rules. Can't is the only cuss word. Choose love and use your manners.
That's right.
We can all benefit from those rules. I really loved the point that you made about the importance of engaging in long, meaningful conversation with the person that you are in a loving relationship with. That's one of the things that has been at the forefront for Marcus and I as well. And after having been in relationships where we didn't have that, where it sounds like you didn't have that, I know Erin didn't have that from our conversations about it, that has stood out as such a meaningful aspect of the love that all of us are building within our relationships as partners. But it's also what we're building in our relationship with each other as family. The times that we all get together and we have these very in-depth, meaningful, authentic, and transparent conversation. And I think that allows us to show what it really means to be human. So thank you for bringing that up. And I had a follow-up question for you.
Sure.
The first thing that you spoke about was the love relationship with your daughter. And we talked about Harper in the first episode and what becoming a father and being a father really means to you. And I know that you had some challenges and some losses and some hiccups in your early life as a child, because we talked about that on the last episode. How do you think that those experiences that you had as a young person shape how you father Harper today?
I think the easiest answer is I think what my parents do, and I kind of do the opposite. And I don't say that lightly. I just look at what happened, and to where Marcus is like grief to gratitude. Mine is you can carry that baggage and say, "Woe is me," and I can't believe how hard my childhood was. But it was hard because it was hard based on the circumstances and how I view it. Someone else can look at my child and be like, "Dude, you had the greatest childhood in the world. I don't know what you're complaining about." So I look at it and say, it was an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to not carry the baggage that way. And it's a better opportunity to look and think, all right, well, how did that impact me? And I'll give you some examples. When I wanted to go to a camp when I was a kid, and we didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't know how poor we were. I knew we didn't have money, but I didn't know exactly how poor. And my stepdad sat me down and he goes, "Yeah, I'm send you to camp. Now, your mom and I won't eat for that week. But if you want to go to camp, that's fine. We just won't eat. So you make the decision." I can recall when I had a conversation with my real dad, very candid conversation about life and what was going on. And we don't talk, but we were kind of at the time. And my mom had gone into, I think back then in the late 70s, they called it the nut house, right? She had a breakdown. And he very candidly told me, he goes, I had an opportunity to come get you and be your dad, and I chose not to. And so when I got divorced, I remember the first thing he asked me is, "Where am I moving?"
Mm.
He lives in a world of escape, right? He lives in this world different. I function in that world very well. I can walk away, or used to be able to walk away very quickly and easily. And I will watch some television shows and you see him and the guy kind of breaks away and does his thing. And you're like, he's going to pack up and move. But he doesn't have anybody. He doesn't have anything. Or the things that he does have, he doesn't mind, or she doesn't mind walking away from. I just know that even though that is based on the people that raised me, of their modus operandi and how they worked and did things, that doesn't mean it's okay. And so for me, it's showing Harper about sticking around, toughing some things out, deciding where the difference is between, like, sometimes in loss, right? Where's the paycheck and where's your integrity? Yes, you can get another check, but at what expense? Yes, you can do this, but at what expense? And that goes the same with, personal relationships and with her and me being here and being available. I'm blown away by people in this world today having kids, especially single parents, go pick their kids up and still do work. I don't know how they do it. I'm blessed. I've found jobs that have allowed me opportunities to be there for her every step of the way. But I know I'm in the minority, not the majority. But I will suffer, that's the appropriate term, or I will make choices and then curb other things to ensure that I have those jobs so that I can be that way. Whether it was an opportunity or whether it was just a lack of, just that just isn't in their bag of chips, right? It's just not what they want to do. My parents weren't that way, and that's okay. That's who they were. But I have chosen and worked very hard to make sure that, at least with Harper, I'm never that way. And there are some times where I slip up, and I slipped up today. As a parent, you make mistakes all the time. And I think the hardest thing for some of us is letting them go, right? Can you lose those? Like, in the loss of losing the memories of where you screw up. Like, where's that bag? Where's that I can let go of, and it doesn't, haunt me every day. But even today, she went to the office with me. We were going to go to a friend's birthday party, one of my friends, not hers. And my check engine light comes on. And I'm like, man, that's like an hour drive. I don't know what's wrong with this stupid car. We're not going to go. And then she's a little upset. And I get it. Hey, it's a party. We're not going. And she had just come from another party. And I remember looking at her saying, "Hey, I get this isn't fun sometimes. And I'm sorry. Do you want me to call your mom? Like, do you want to go to your mom's house and hang out with your friends? You can do that. It's Sunday. Like, it's not going to hurt my feelings." And she cried and she gave me a hug and she goes, "Dad, I really want to hang out with you." I was like, "All right, okay." I go, "Barbara, I don't want you to be upset." But there was a part of me, right? There was that stepped back. There was just that initial part that just instantly stepped back because I saw I could not do for her what I wanted to. And then I didn't know what to do next. And I applaud an 11-year-old for stepping up and being like, "No, I'm going to hang out. We watched a couple episodes of a show that we watched together and we chatted. And then she made a smoothie and now she's in her room watching one of the fullest of houses, enjoying herself and just having the best time and doing art at the same time and trying to figure out how I multitask so that she can do it. There's one thing I've made a mistake on. It's showing her how I work and her trying to emulate it. She's like, "What? I've got an art project going on. I've got a puzzle. I've got my TV on. I've got music on, and I'm trying to read this book." And I'm like, "No, you're not. You're 11. Your poor brain is just," she goes, "But that's what you do." I'm like, "Well, yeah, no, right?" So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I really answered your question there, but I used to think about what they would do and do the opposite or as close to the opposite as I could. Now I've just kind of removed them out of the equation. And now I look at it and I just think, what am I going to say and do? It's going to be most beneficial for our relationship. That's going to ensure that she can always come talk to me and that she knows I'll be there for her and I'll support her and that I love her. I'm human and I don't do it correctly all the time, but I do know that I continually talk to her and try. And I let her know when I make mistakes and I let her know that I love her. And, hopefully, when she's my age looking back, she'll have a different opinion of me than I have of my parents.
Well, she is very lucky to have you as a dad. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah. And as it comes to loss, the second part of that, I mean, most recently, I lost my grandmother, which was tough. She was kind of the matriarch of our family, and she was just a great human being. I've had quite a few other losses, but whether professional or personal, those I carry them differently because I was just such a different person back then. Some of it on the financial side, probably, on work side, professional side, if you will, anger. It used to be a lot. And then on the personal side of loss, I would say now I'm learning. I'm learning how it affected me, how it's impacted me, from relationship losses. I've embraced my grandmother's loss. It's not something sad. I mean, she was 94 years old and living off Dr. Peppers and maple bars. I mean, that woman was living her best life. She was she was, and she was a trickster and she had her jokes and she was great, So I don't have sadness. I have tears of joy that I got to spend so much time with her. My one regret is, that ability to just kind of step away. And there was a lot of years where I stepped away from Townsend, Montana and her, a lot, where I should have been there. And I just wasn't because I didn't know how to have a relationship with my family. Because I didn't have a relationship with my dad, and that's his side of the family. So I just siloed myself. So there is a lot of loss there, but it's no loss that I can go back and change. I can only try to change things moving forward. And some days I do it okay, and a lot of days I don't. But it is once again an opportunity, right? And what do you want to do with that opportunity? And some days you wake up and you've got it in front of you and you tackle it, and some days you don't, and you got to look at those days and figure out why, and you got to move on to the next day and reach out and try something different. And I think probably the greatest loss that I've suffered was my ability to be able to walk away. And that has created a ton of loss for me. And it's something that I regret every day, but I also try to fix every day in some way.
Marcus, I would love to hear what you have to say about that, what Jason just shared about not being able to walk away and the regret that he carries because of that.
Well, in my personal life and the work that I do, I see regret as a road sign. So, you're driving down the interstate, right? And there's these signs, turn off right here, you can get here, and 2 miles down the road, here's here. So regret pops up when a memory comes up in my life that is about regret or anything like that, what I would consider to be sort of not what you want to feel necessarily, right? It's there to help you. Well, what did you regret? What are you regretting in this moment? And you go into that regret and you really try to understand what you're regretting and why. And then you use that information that you mine from that roadside of regret that popped into your mind and into your life. And you use that to grow and to try to do things differently. So you don't have to have those regrets anymore, because we all make mistakes. We all have regrets. We just don't need to carry those necessarily to our grave, in my opinion. What we need to do is activate them in our life. Let them come in. Let them poke us for a minute. Let them open our mind. Let them inspire us to be more than we were before so that we don't have to create moments of regret as often as we used to. And by the end of our life, maybe we're not left with regret. Maybe we're left with an experience called life, and we filled those holes of regret and the other things that we have with learning experiences that made us more wholer, better. And that legacy that we leave is who we are through all of that at the end, and what we show the world about what it is to truly be a human being with all of its ups, all of its downs, and all of the growth opportunities that it actually presents to us.
How do you feel about that, Jason?
Fundamentally, I agree with Marcus. Absolutely. Regret and how you approach and look at it does change, right? I mean, you can take the woe is me and you can look at it and be sad, but there's opportunity in everything, right? And it's what you want to do with it. And it's how you want to hold yourself accountable. And you have to take an opportunity and look and be like, all right, well, what's my true north? Where's my moral compass to do? How do I want to learn from this so I can be a better person? And not just for me, but also for the people around me. When my grandmother passed, I remember sitting down with a family member by myself in this church, and it's hustle and bustle. And I have so many memories from this church. I mean, old wooden pews where I'd move and they'd creak really loud, and everyone knew that I was fidgety, right? Or singing songs a little too loud because it's a bunch of old people, and then there's young, 7-year-old Jason singing the hymns, just like a rock star, off tune, but just loving it. Can't believe I got the opportunity to sing out loud. And I was sitting there by myself in the back room, and so many potlucks there. I'm watching cousins and people engage and talk. And a family member came by and sat down next to me, and she's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I said, "I'm fine." I said, I'm mad, but I'm mad at me because I let divorce and I let two different adults dictate where I spent time because they were angry at one another. And now I don't have a relationship with anyone in this room. So I watch them talk and share memories and talk about Christmases and Thanksgivings and spring breaks and summers and rodeos. My stories stop at 10 and I'm 50. I think Aaron might remember this. I think the rest of us will. There was that show Dallas, which was like a nighttime soap opera. And my mom and the guy who pretty much raised me, Lee, they loved that show. And for some reason, as a very young child, they just let me watch it. Inappropriate for anybody under 30 to watch, and just a horrible show to begin with. But there is a pivotal moment in this television show where one of the main characters, JR, gets shot. And I was at the Townsend Rodeo, and it was in between bull riding and barrel racing. And they're quiet, and everyone's going to get a beer, a popcorn. And I stood up, and I'm like, "Can anyone tell me who shot JR?" Right? And the stands just erupt in laughter. But that's one of the last memories that people have in that town of me. And then you got to fast forward to now that since I've had Harper, right? The last 10 years of kind of intermittently coming in and out of there. But what do you do with me? I haven't been around. I'm not part of the conversations. I'm not part of anything that's happened there. And that was my choice because of outside influences. And so going back to Harper and myself as well, it's like, all right, well, how do I not allow that to happen again? And how do I grow from that so it's less regret and more information growth and learning?
I really appreciate that dialogue, Marcus and Jason, that the two of you just had. So, Kelly, thank you for prompting some of that back and forth. And it's interesting because, Marcus, your work connects to what we're discussing and the themes of this podcast. And you don't just speak from personal experience. You've spent over 20 years helping others navigate these exact questions. And you've coached thousands of people through grief, reinvention, and the release of expectation. So, based on what we've talked about so far, what are some of the biggest themes that continue to emerge for you in this work?
Well, love and loss are big ones, in the work that I do. I work with individuals, couples, leadership teams, organizations, etc. So I see a lot of different things. Love and loss, communication, poor, ineffective communication is massive. No matter where you go, you have relationships of one sort or another, and communication is a part of it. And the better that communication is, the better those relationships and outcomes will be. I have never found a situation where that is not true. I'm open to finding one if that's not true, but really communication, listening to other human beings, asking questions where you don't understand instead of making assumptions, doing your best to remain neutral, open, objective, so that you can actually pull things in, help people navigate these challenges of loss, love, relationships that aren't working out for them, married couples who are going for divorce and they don't want to break up their kids, they don't want to impact their kids, etc. Leaders who are working in organizations and want to be the very best leaders that they can be, but the role models that they have haven't been the greatest. How do I step out of what I've been taught, what my default settings are, and really become a leader in my own right, really help the people around me? How do I build a company that actually cares about the people that work within it, the community that it's involved in, instead of just being money hungry and we'll take whatever we can sell and sell it for as much as we possibly can, but people who actually care about their community, their business, and their people. So, it's quite a journey to be a coach. I'll be honest with you. When you've been around over 20 years and you're not afraid to go in any door pretty much and just see what is behind door number 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 5, and you're willing to listen and create a safe place, you hear all kinds of stuff. I would say that the things that come up over and over and over again: listening, communication, gratitude, making peace with your mistakes. Don't forget them, but forgive yourself for them so that you can move forward and aren't tied down by that chain of what has been. One of the things I work with people on is, how do you turn your past trash into current treasure? When the average person looks at their life, there's this collection of trash that has been their life that is over here somewhere. They try to stuff it into a dark corner, stuff it down, put a lid on it, whatever it might be. And that doesn't work. It keeps coming back. It keeps popping up. It keeps showing up in your life again. And so what I try to show people is, look, we all have a history that has quote unquote trash in it. But you know what? We can recycle that trash for treasure in the form of wisdom and knowledge and understanding that if we put it to play in our life now, we can really use that trash for something good as we recycle it into treasure and pay it forward, and use that to power yourself as a human being and the lives of people and businesses around you. Because if you don't do that, what you are left with is a very burdensome trash heap that you don't want, and neither does anybody else. So let's figure out a way to turn trash into treasure and get on with the process of living a life and living the best life you can.
You have helped me do that in so many profound ways. I will admit that as much as I am proud of my life, my choices, my career path, there have been some extraordinary challenges, some missteps, some mistakes, some misunderstandings, some epic failures. And one of the things that challenges me as a human being is not being able to let go in my brain of those things. And I'm sure that you face that, see that, explore that with your clients in profound and meaningful ways. But you have helped me do that. So thank you as your partner, as your friend on this journey of life together. But thank you for bringing that up, because loss comes in so many different ways. And that's a theme that we keep talking about in this podcast, but I really want to hit on it right now, that I've experienced really profound losses of human life. And Aaron and I will explore some of those losses through death, through broken relationships, through all kinds of things as we continue through. But there's also the loss that comes from not having things play out the way that you had planned, or the marriage didn't work out and none of us get married with the intention of getting divorced. And what does that mean now for my children? And how is that loss of their dreams and their expectations and their sense of family, how is that going to shape them and their future? There's the loss of businesses, of careers, jobs, identity, senses, mobility. There's so many different losses. And if we allow it, they can become that heap of trash. And then they just plague us. And so all that to say, you have personally helped me with that at a very, very deep level. And I am deeply grateful for that. So thank you.
My pleasure, sweetheart. Thanks for letting me be a part of your life. I'm very grateful.
So, for both of you, looking back and piggying off the discussion we had in part one of this conversation, what would you tell your younger self? What are some things that you wish you had known earlier in life about love and loss that you're using now in your life? And how are you using that to support the people in your life today?
Go, Jay.
Well, that's a really good question. I guess if I were to look at my younger self, I think there's a couple things, and it's difficult. This is always a tough question because you have the perspective and you have time on your side, right? You have years of experience and insight, and you've gone through the pain and you've gone through the loss. And I think the thing that makes information tough of telling your younger self is because you learned the lesson. And if you learned the lesson, it means you went through something. Do you avoid a lesson so you don't have to learn something? And I don't know that that exists. It took me a long time to like me, and I like me. So, are there some things that I would change? Yeah, I would want to tell myself to stay closer to people. I'd want to tell myself it's okay to reach out and invite yourself places. I'd want to tell myself that nobody's perfect and nothing's easy. But that said, it's still okay to love those people. And all of that, I would most importantly say is, hey, there's going to be a lot of mistakes made. There's are good, bad, and indifferent. There's going to be a lot of mistakes. You're going to make them. People are going to make them on your behalf. You are going to trust the wrong people. You're going to love the wrong people. Learn from it. I can't stop pain. I can't stop loss. I can't stop mistakes. But if you can just figure out how to learn from it, the only other thing I'd tell myself is, Jesus, man, let it go. I remember mistakes I made when I was 5 that bother me to this day. Let it go. But those are the two things. I wouldn't stop the pain. I wouldn't stop the mistakes because it makes you who you are. But I would try to tell myself how to deal with them a little bit better so I get through them better and come out better on the other side.
Well, I I can't say I don't echo some of what you think there, my friend. I mean, I used to be pretty hard on myself when I was younger, and I didn't give myself grace where I needed to give myself grace. And over the years, I've learned to give myself grace and others grace too, at a much higher level. One of the things that really helped me was to learn to drop expectations, what has to be no matter what. Because if you have an expectation of yourself, that's a little bit easier to manage because it's just you. But the farther it goes away from your body and the more people that get involved with that situation, the harder it is for expectations to line up because the expectation lives only in your mind as a human being. We don't have USB cords we plug into the back of each other's head, go, hey, here's my expectation. What do you think? We just have them. And when people don't meet them, it's pretty tough, right? And so basically, what I've tried to do and what I try to teach my clients over all these years, try to drop your expectations. Don't give up your standards, have standards, but understand that you can't possibly perceive every variable that's going to come your way between now and the culmination of what you expect to happen. And you don't know what other people are going to do or not do. So instead, why don't you set your intention for what you would like to experience? And as it evolves, be willing to move with it, be willing to roll with it, be willing to pivot with it, as Aaron's and I talked about in the last episode a little bit, so that you could actually make it what's the best that can be given the circumstances and really have a great experience, or you lock yourself into the box of expectation of what has to be no matter what, when you can't even foresee all the variables that are going to come to bear. I wish I had learned earlier about that so that I would have suffered less. But, I like myself too, and I like my life, and I'm happy that I'm here. I think about the miracle that it is that one sperm, one egg got together and made me out of all the possibilities that were there, how things had to line up in history exactly the way they did for me to even show up on this planet. So I really wouldn't go back and redo it because it's maybe who I am. I just really appreciate the lessons along the way. And one of them has been to try to focus on what's the best that can be given the circumstances, as opposed to what has to be no matter what.
You said something that is so profound, and that is to suffer less. And if I could add a mission statement to the PIG, it would be that this is a space where people learn that they don't have to go through life suffering. whether
Yes.
it's a loss that they have experienced that is really impacting them in a profound way, the loss of somebody they love deeply, or any other kind of loss. But to be agents of helping people suffer less adds incredible meaning to what we're doing. What I love about these conversations is also that they remind us that loss isn't the end of the story. That the love we give, the love we receive, the relationships we pour into and nurture, the moments that we show up for others, all of it leaves such an indelible mark on who we are as human beings.
Well, and that's really what legacy is. It's not just what we leave behind when we're gone, it's how we live right now. The way we choose to love, the way we show up, the way we create meaning in our everyday lives. That's what we want to explore next.
Because at the end of the day, like Marcus shared in our last episode, we don't get to choose when this curtain closes. We don't know how long we'll be here, but we do get to choose how we live, how we show up every single day. And when we look at our own experiences through the lens of love and loss, through all the stories that shape us, how do we take all of that and use it to build something meaningful?
Jason and Marcus, we've talked about your journeys, the profound moments that have changed you and the lessons you've carried forward. When you think about legacy, not just in the traditional sense, but in the way we live, what does that mean to you?
Boy, legacy is that's a tough one. I can simply, in the narrow view of just people around me, I would say that for me, I want to leave a fingerprint on hopefully, for my daughter that she's proud that I was her dad, that she learned something from me that will carry on. There's, it's that ancient wisdom, right? It's those things that my grandma said this, or I remember going to the garage door at my grandparents' house in Townsend, Montana. And she would drive up, and I didn't notice this till later in life, but she'd have one hand in her purse. She'd go, abracadabra. And the garage door would open up. And I didn't know we were poor. I didn't know there was a garage door opener. We manually pulled them up. And I thought she was a magician. That was the coolest thing ever. She had this legacy of fun. She had this legacy of positivity. She has this legacy of love and, making everything around. Add a pinch of salt. It's now my recipe. Look at what I did, right? I mean, she had this fun beauty of life. And so I'm not her. I don't have that same personality, but I want that same legacy. I want people to look back and think about or remember me and carry on through their lives in a different way, in a more positive way, because they engaged with me, because we listened to one another, because we loved one another in some capacity. But mostly, for me, it's my daughter. She's the one piece on this earth that will, continue in some way my part of my family, moving forward. And so I just want to be that positive light and impact for her. I would like to have some altruistic, great idea and grand plan of my impact on planet Earth and what I can do and things like that. But, I don't care. I just don't. I care about her. I really do. And I just want her to look back and be like, I'm proud that he was my dad.
That's a pretty good one there, my friend. Kelly knows this wholeheartedly that I have no desire to be famous. My car is not a status symbol for me, where I live, the clothes I wear. None of this matters to me. What matters to me are the nuts and bolts of life, that I cared, that I showed up, that I gave everything that I had, that I was a good example to follow. I hope that people take the very best from me. I really want to live on in the hearts and minds of the people that are in my family, that are close to me in my family, my friends that are close to me, and the clients that I hope I've touched their lives, whether it be in their personal life or their professional life or both. I don't have any desire to live on in infamy. I have a desire to live on in the heartbeat, in the memory, in the souls of human beings that I interacted with at a very deep, integrous, passionate level with, and that they carry a piece of me with them as long as they're alive, because that's the meat of it for me. That's the meat. That's what matters. That's what I see legacy as being in my life.
These conversations are such a powerful reminder that experiencing loss isn't just about trudging through to the other side. It's not just about navigating what it means to lose. It's about embracing what we can learn, seeing how we can grow, and finding ways to move forward stronger and better than before.
And it's about recognizing that every experience, every love, every loss leaves something with us. And ultimately, it's up to us what we choose to do with that. Marcus, Jason, thank you for being part of this journey with us and for sharing so much of your hearts and experiences with us and with our listeners.
As we wrap up this episode and part 2 of our conversation, and for those that haven't listened to episode 2, part 1, I'm going to encourage you again to go back and make sure you do that. Are there any last thoughts or wisdom you would like to share? Any messages you would like to send?
I would like to just say how much fun this has been spending these hours discussing these things with you wonderful human beings and sharing this with the world. There's 4 people on this podcast right now that have a combined life experience of probably about 175 years, and coming from different angles and different perspectives, different experiences. And what joy this has been to be a part of this. I'm so grateful. I'm so proud of you ladies for doing what you're doing and sharing these things with the world, and really being inspired by your mother's 13 boxes and what that's brought us to here today. I'm grateful. I'm happy. And this is wonderful. I guess the final thing I would like to say to listeners is, embrace your life. Put your hands on the steering wheel, drive intentionally. I love the I, intention, right? In your BIG. Be intentional about it. Put your hands on the wheel of your life. Pay attention where you're going. Don't spend too much time looking in the rearview mirror or the side view mirror. It's okay to know where you came from, but what matters most is where you are now, okay, and where you're going. Because each moment that you're alive, the decisions you make, the choices that you make in every moment is a stepping stone into your next moment of your life, to the future that you're eventually going to have, and the past that you're building at the same time. Understand that for just a moment. When you're alive and you're present in the moment of your life as it's happening, and you're really turned on, in tune and present, you actually get to decide what kind of past you want to have and what kind of future you want to have, because you're creating it in the moment. Be alive. Life is great. Make it so.
Really like that. I mean, I would echo to that and say also, this is one, it's been a beautiful opportunity. The laughter before the calls, the threatens of horrible puns and facts of life songs being thrown in, and then the reality of where this is, right? And being able to open and share and be vulnerable and not hide it with comedy and quips and puns, but to be present and be aware. This series of podcasts we've done and listening to what you ladies have already accomplished and what you're going to do has been amazing. And I'm so proud of both of you for what you've done and what you continue to do. But I'm also blessed. I'm blessed to have Erin in my life. And because of her being in my life, I get Marcus and Kelly, and Marcus has fundamentally changed my life with his coaching and with his insights and spending a weekend. And I say that not to plug Marcus, I say that to tell people, plug into the people around you, learn from them. Yeah, they see the world differently. Good. If everyone you're sitting with sees the world the same way, you're sitting in the wrong group. Challenge yourself, grow, be uncomfortable. It's okay. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have a different perspective, but understand the other person's. See where the give is. My give is it frustration or anger? For me, it's always frustration. But I can see how people are like, man, he's getting angry. It's like, no, I'm frustrated because I don't know. Right. But I had to learn from Marcus of where that give is, where that what that word means and why it bothered me. So take your moment with the people around you and make sure you're learning from them, but also make sure that you're open to learn from them, that you've opened your heart and your mind so that you can, and be a resource for them as well. This is the 4 of us here is an absolute blessing to me because every time we get together, I learn. And every time we get together, I shed a couple tears of joy and just of overall love of life for having you all in my life because I get challenged to think a little differently. I get challenged to do something different, to break out of my comfort zone. It only makes me better. And if it makes me better, then guess what? I'm having a more positive impact on my daughter. and I'm having a more positive impact on the people around me.
Well, I absolutely echo that. And I also learn from you every single day, from Kelly and from Marcus. Having relationships like this is a very beautiful gift, and I am very grateful for all of you. And before we wrap up, you both know what's coming, our signature question. As you know, and we've talked about even today, our PIG is purpose, intention, and gratitude. But we would like to know your PIG and why is that your PIG?
Well, I tell you, I struggled with this one because I really like your guys's. I think
It
purpose,
can be yours
intention, and
too.
gratitude is
We'll share.
fantastic. How could you beat that, right? I mean, it kind of encompasses all the great stuff, right? I guess if I was gonna, have fun, because that's one of the things I want to be known for at the end, my legacy. Marcus had a good time, and when you're around him, it was a good time. So if we're just gonna have a good time with PIG, I would say passion, integrity, and great times. Because if you're passionate and you're willing to be integrity based, you can feel good as who you are as a human being. You are going to make a difference. You're going to have success. And why not have great times? Because you know what? Life is short, as we all know. The older we get, the shorter it gets. Let's have a great time. Life is great, everybody. PIG is amazing.
Oh, I love that so much. Jason?
Dang, I love that. I'm also going to have some fun with it. Mine is pizza, innovation, and go. One, I could eat pizza every day. And there have been many a weeks where I have eaten pizza every day, and I'm okay with it. I love pizza. I think it's the perfect food. You got fruits and vegetables and meats and breads. You got it all coming together. It's a little party, and it's the best little party in the world. Innovation, I like to do stuff that's never been done before. I like to create experiences and opportunities that people just haven't seen or don't know what to expect, and then really catch them off guard to create an opportunity. And then go, as Marcus knows, I have a high drive, and I just hope people keep up. Do I need to learn from that and slow down a little bit sometimes and hope people, and let people catch up or explain myself a little better? Absolutely. But is that part of my PIG go? Yeah, it is. My foot's on the drive. It's hard to have one eye forward and one eye looking back, and that creates a lot of weight and baggage. And sometimes there are weekends where you crash because of it. And I can learn from that. But yeah, pizza, innovation, and go. And folks, go do something different. Go embrace life. Go get that slice. Go be you and make sure that the people around you love you for who you are, not because of the cool little thing that you put on the dating profile or that best picture. Or, I always say, if you want to find out if you really want to date someone, get stuck in traffic with them and see how they handle it, right? Like but go do it. And then understand, all right, well, what made them upset? All right, well, man, do I want to change? Can I be around that? You just find that, but go do it. Don't sit back. Go be brave. Be brave in moments, be brave in opportunities, put that pedal to the metal and just go forward. What's the worst that happens?
God, just so incredible. I love it. Thank you both so much.
So, Aaron, as we close today's episode, I want to remind our listeners about Marcus and Jason's PIG: passion, integrity, greatness, pizza, innovation, and go. These episodes just keep getting better and better, and this is still just the beginning. As we expand our conversations in future episodes, we'll be going even deeper into stories of our own, the unexpected ways legacy has shown up in our own lives beyond the boxes.
And we'll be joined by special guests, both everyday people and experts, who will share their own stories and bring incredible wisdom on topics like grief, healing, family, relationships, and what it really means to live a life of meaning.
As a reminder, this is far more than just a podcast. The PIG is about connection and community. It is a journey we're all on together, and we want to hear from you. What are the stories, the lessons, the legacies that have shaped your life? We are working with purpose, intention, and gratitude to create a space where these conversations continue to thrive between episodes.
If today's conversation resonated with you, we'd love for you to be part of this ongoing dialogue. Join us in our growing community on Discord and OWN, where we continue these conversations in real time. You can also connect with us through our website at thepigpodcast.com. And if you have a story about love, loss, or legacy that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you.
Finally, will you do us a favor? The only way to continue reaching more people who need to hear these stories and who can benefit from the community we're building is to subscribe, leave a review, and share both this podcast and this episode with someone who might need to hear it. We could not do this without you.
We're so grateful you're here and on this journey. Until next time,
hugs and kisses, everyone.